the train that arrived late. Emma Lawson always believed that timing was everything. She believed that the right opportunities appeared at the right moment and that every important event in life happened for a reason. But at 28 years old, she was beginning to question that belief. Her life was not bad, but it was not what she had imagined. She worked in a publishing company in London, lived alone in a small apartment, and spent most evenings reading books or watching movies. While many of her friends were getting married and starting families, Emma felt as if her own story had somehow paused. One rainy Friday evening, she left work later than usual and hurried toward the train station. She planned to visit her grandmother in a nearby city for the weekend. The station was crowded with travelers carrying bags and umbrellas. Large drops of rain hit the glass roof above them while announcements echoed through the building. Emma checked the departure board and sighed. Her train was delayed by 45 minutes. Frustrated, she found an empty seat and opened a novel from her bag. Across the waiting area, a young man sat reading the exact same book. Emma noticed him immediately. It was not only the book that caught her attention. There was something familiar about him, although she was certain they had never met. The man looked up briefly and smiled when he realized she was holding the same novel. Emma smiled back before returning to her reading. 20 minutes later, she stood up to buy coffee. As she approached the cafe, she accidentally bumped into someone. Her book slipped from her hands and fell onto the floor. "I'm so sorry," a voice said. Emma looked up and discovered it was the same man from the waiting area. He quickly picked up her book and handed it back. "Thank you," she said. "No. Thank you," he replied with a grin. "You just gave me an excuse to talk to someone reading my favorite book." Emma laughed. They ordered coffee together and began discussing the story. His name was Daniel Reed. He was 30 years old and worked as an architect. What started as a simple conversation about books soon became a discussion about travel, music, dreams, and life. To Emma's surprise, talking to him felt effortless. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. By the time the train finally arrived, they were both smiling like old friends. Then they discovered another coincidence. They were traveling to the same city. During the journey, they sat together and continued talking. Outside the window, rain covered the countryside in a soft grey mist. Inside the train, the world seemed smaller and warmer. Emma found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone. Daniel listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions and making her laugh. When they arrived at their destination, neither wanted the conversation to end. Before leaving the station, Daniel asked for her number. Emma felt a small rush of happiness as she gave it to him. Over the following weeks, they exchanged messages every day. Their conversations stretched late into the night. Sometimes they discussed serious topics. Sometimes they shared ridiculous jokes. Emma found herself smiling whenever his name appeared on her phone. Eventually, they began meeting regularly. They visited museums, explored small towns, attended concerts, and spent hours talking in cafes. Everything felt natural. Emma had dated other people before, but this felt different. There was no pressure, no confusion, and no need to pretend. She could simply be herself. One evening, several months later, Daniel invited her to dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the river. The city lights reflected beautifully on the water below. As they talked, Emma noticed that Daniel seemed distracted. He smiled less than usual and occasionally stared out the window. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "There's something I need to tell you." Emma's heart sank slightly. Suddenly, dozens of worries entered her mind. Daniel took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position in New York." Emma felt the world pause. "New York?" she repeated quietly. Daniel nodded. "It's a huge opportunity. The kind of opportunity I've worked toward for years." Emma forced a smile. "That's wonderful. But inside she felt completely different. New York was thousands of miles away. The future she had imagined suddenly seemed uncertain. During the following weeks, both of them avoided discussing the subject. Neither wanted to face the difficult reality. Yet the departure date continued approaching. One afternoon, Emma sat alone in a park, watching leaves fall from the trees. She realized she was afraid. Not only afraid of losing Daniel, but afraid of allowing herself to fully love someone. If he left, her heart would break. If she held back, she might regret it forever. For the first time, she understood that love always involved risk. A few days later, Daniel invited her for a walk. The sky was clear, and the city seemed unusually peaceful. Eventually, they reached a bridge overlooking the river. Daniel stopped walking and turned toward her. "I've spent weeks trying to make a decision," he said. "Everyone tells me New York is the obvious choice." Emma remained silent. "But every time I imagine leaving, something feels wrong." He looked directly into her eyes. "Because you're here." Emma felt tears forming. Daniel smiled softly. "Before I met you, I thought success was the most important thing in life. Now I'm not so sure." Emma shook her head. "You shouldn't give up your dream because of me." Daniel laughed gently. "That's the strange thing. You're not stopping me from following my dream. You became part of it." Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded train ticket. Emma looked at it in confusion. It was an old ticket from the night they first met. "I kept this," Daniel said, "because that delayed train changed everything." Emma smiled through her tears. "Mine too." Daniel took her hand. "I don't know what the future looks like. Maybe we'll travel. Maybe we'll move somewhere completely different. Maybe life won't be perfect. But I know one thing." He squeezed her hand gently. "I want you beside me." Emma felt every fear disappear. In that moment, the uncertainty no longer mattered. What mattered was the person standing in front of her. "Then let's figure it out together," she whispered. Daniel smiled, and for the first time in weeks, both of them felt at peace. 1 year later, they returned to the same train station where they had first met. This time there was no delay, no rain, and no uncertainty. As they stood together on the platform, Emma remembered the woman she had been before that evening. The woman who believed her story had paused. She realized now that life often changed when we least expected it. Sometimes it happened because of a big decision. Sometimes it happened because of a single conversation. And sometimes it happened because a train arrived 45 minutes late. As the train pulled into the station, Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Emma smiled and rested her head against him. The future remained unwritten, but for the first time in her life, she was excited to discover what the next chapter would bring. After all, the best love stories do not begin with perfect timing. They begin when two people find each other exactly when they need each other most.